Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to First Person, the show where we meet the most interesting people in IT and learn from them what makes them tick by focusing only on their firsts. I'm your host, Matt Egan, asking you to enjoy, like, and subscribe wherever you find us. And if you're an interesting person in IT, let us know. You might be the next first person. The next voice you hear will be today's guest. He is Jim Wilt. Jim is absolutely one of the most interesting people in IT, someone who describes himself as a voraciously curious CTO, distinguished chief architect, and engineering advocate. Jim's enjoying a stellar career with roles as CTO, CDO, and chief architect across a multitude of enterprise organizations. And we're delighted to have him as a guest on First Person. So, Jim, welcome. And first up, what's the first thing people should know about you?
I think everything that you said is probably very well stated and bloated. I don't think of myself as anything interesting or anything along those lines, but we'll find out during this conversation. Um, it's just exciting to talk and share experiences and thoughts with others if it can bring an aha moment to someone. It's like, oh, I failed that way. I can maybe learn from his failure too.
That's definitely what we're aiming for here, right? It's all of our experiences, the benefits of them are not always the things that we expect, right? So we find that by talking, it's good to share those insights. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate you being with us, Jim. So section one of our conversation, we like to call first things first, and this is where we like to get to know about our guest by understanding some of their first time. So, Jim, please tell me about your first job in this industry, your first job in IT.
So I'm going to give you it's a two-part answer on that.
Here we go.
The the first part I didn't get paid for, but it was an equitable arrangement. In the era of early computers, and I'm talking very early computers, I was in a family situation where we were not of the ability to ever purchase one. We were just too poor. And Radio Shack store down the road had this TRS 80. We, called it the Trash 80, but it was the first computer that was accessible. And I couldn't afford the computer, but I could afford the book that taught you how to program in BASIC.
Yeah.
So I'm in high school. I buy the BASIC book. I teach myself BASIC, and you do it all on paper and in your mind. And then I go to the manager of the Radio Shack store and I said, "You got all these brand new computers sitting on the shelf, just sitting there.
Yeah.
How about I write some programs, some interactive programs, some graphic programs? How about I do that?" He goes, "You know how to program?" I go, "I bought the book at the store. I know everything there is to know about programming." And so that was my first step into this industry. And I did it because it was a workaround. If you can't afford to buy something, find a way to do it for free. And that's exactly what I did. They gave me time on the computer unlimited. I wrote demo programs for them, and it was just an equitable relationship. So then I graduate, I get into college, and my first paying job was an internship at Upjohn, which is a pharmaceutical company now known as Pfizer. But at the time, they had a data entry position. And this is where it gets a little exciting. Disappointments come sometimes with an open door right after them. I was up against a girl from Purdue, and I interviewed with all the staff, and the general manager called me into her office after the interviews. And she said, "I just want you to know, Jim, we're going to give the data entry position to the girl from Purdue." And I said, "I'm from a state university. I get that. Purdue, pretty prestigious." And, I met her. She's a really nice gal. Great. And thank you for calling me in to tell me personally. And she goes, "No, no, 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 no. We're not done yet." She goes, "During the interview process, the team decided they want you on as a scientific programmer because you're getting a degree in physics and computer science and mathematics. They want you to write code, not data entry." I said, "I'm in. Let's do it." She goes, "Well, there's a problem. We don't have a position or budget." So I said, "I'll do it for free." And she goes, "We can't work that way." So she goes, "What we're gonna do is we're gonna put you in the visiting nurse program." So I was a visiting nurse for my internship, so I could get paid to do scientific programming in the, scientific, group at, Upjohn. That was my very first job, and what an
Amazing.
exciting experience that was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, of all places. It was pretty exciting.
But there's so much to unpick there, Jim, because first of all, first of all, I'm sure there's a book to be written about the role of Radio Shack in the burgeoning careers of so many people in science and technology, right? Because it's it's not a unique story that the access to the kit was the thing that drove things. But I'm intrigued. Like, what was it that made you buy the book on programming? Right, without access to a computer, you were interested in doing that.
Well, when I was in elementary school, I went to a movie with one of my friends' birthday parties, and it was this crazy movie called, The Computer Who Wore Tennis Shoes from Walt Disney,
Yeah.
and it was about a guy who accessing a computer and it gets burned into his brain, this kind of a thing, but it's my first real exposure to practical computing as opposed to a James Bond kind of a movie, and it clicked. It's like, "That's really cool. I might not be any good at it, but golly, I've gotta try," kind of a thing.
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
cool.
you hear about them, but then they came to the humans at the, level of a Radio Shack or a Apple IIe or all of the others that were out at the time, and it was like just a natural progression. Buy the book, see if it makes sense, try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, I know what I'm not good at. That's one thing, but it worked out fairly well for me.
No, it's amazing, and, I suspect, Jim, I wouldn't like to say this for sure, but I suspect I'm a little younger than you, but I'm probably the last of the generation of I was the editor in chief of a magazine about computers before I ever owned a computer, right? Whereas to people, anybody under the age of, like, 40, like, that's just, like, wild, right, to even think about that, but it's so interesting that the path that fiction and science fiction can play in intriguing and exciting, creative minds into using this technology. And so impressive that your first boss was like, "We don't have a job for this guy. He's definitely not right for the data entry job, but we need to find a way of bringing them on board." So here you are with what sounds like a very smart and progressive employer. You're in there. You're doing the scientific work as a nurse. Was that kind of the first time that you thought, yeah, this is it. This is the gig for me. This is the industry that I want to work in.
Yeah, it's not that I would say I would never be one to say I'm really good at anything, but we have a
Right.
Pacific Northwest saying, "I didn't totally suck at it."
That's very British, actually.
Is kind of the way I would look at it, and I say that, and I had my own company when I was in Michigan, and my business partner was introducing me to Joe Mantle, the CTO of the NFL, National Football League. Our football's a little different than your football, right, Matt?
Well,
So,
I'm a big fan, so that's fine. I get it. I get it both ways.
yeah, and so I'm talking, I'm from Michigan. I'm talking to a guy in New York City, and, in Manhattan, and my business partner came from New York and was in Michigan. And Joe asked me a question, "Do you know anything about such and such a technical topic?" And I said, "Well, I know a little bit about it, you
Yeah.
know." And Andy, my business partner, stepped in. He goes, "Jim, I got to correct you on something. In New York City, if you can spell it, you're an expert on it." And then he goes, "Joe, I need to tell you something about Jim. If you know a little bit about it, you've probably done 5 talks on it, published 2 papers, and written a book, and you know a little bit about it." He goes,
Yeah.
there's a cultural difference here." So I'm always of the cultural, I guess, significant way of looking at me is I know I don't know everything, and I assume I know nothing, and I'm surprised when I get something right. So it's then when I get something wrong, it's just like, well, yeah, of course, it's part of the learning process. But
Yeah.
this is kind of how I've always been at things. I never would say I'm really good, but then you go and you get like an award or something like that. And
Yeah.
I got an award. This is just so funny. I got an award as a distinguished alumni at my university. And I'm in the middle of doing some programming. It wasn't working. I was having a hard day, and the university calls and they go, "Hey, Jim, you were nominated." This is Central Michigan University. And I said, "Oh, do you need money again?" I think my wife manages our donations. Can you give her a call? She goes, "No, no, no, it's not about money this time." They go, "You were nominated to be the distinguished alumni this year." And I said, "Oh, how cool is that? That's wonderful. Love the nomination. Great. Do I need to give you money?" She goes, "No, you were chosen as a distinguished alumni."
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Great. Thank you. I'm really busy right now. Can I get back to you? I mean, is there something I need to do? She goes, "Yes, you need to give us names of who's going to come to the dinner when the president has a dinner for you and they announce it at a banquet." And I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. That's
Um,
amazing.
you're going to have to give my wife a call. I'm in the middle of something right now. So even when something comes and it's a great, great honor to receive that award, it's something that hits you as, but I'm solving a problem right now. That's wonderful, but I'm solving a problem. So someone who can figure that out, let them talk to you about dinner and guests and things like that, and then I'll continue solving my problem.
But I mean, it sounds, what's very clear is level of focus on solving the problem. Really, fantastically important, right? And also, you're being self-deprecating, but you've also really articulated that you do the work, right? Like, I don't know much about something, but I'm gonna spend time finding it out. I think what's interesting about that professionally is that needs, you need to work with people who recognize that, right? Who are able to kind of nurture that kind of approach. And I just wonder if you can think of a first great boss who's supported you in your professional development, and if you can identify such a figure, what kind of things did you learn from that person?
So I've had 2 great bosses that are firsts. One is before I was in the industry. When I was in high school, I'd ride my bike to McDonald's and work at McDonald's. And I had a boss at McDonald's. I think his name was Jeff, and he just said, "Be a leader to everybody." I really sucked at working at McDonald's. It wasn't that I didn't totally suck. I totally sucked at working at McDonald's.
I was
So
saying
the
the
first
Pizza Hut.
year, yeah, the only thing they could do is put me in the dining room because I was incapable of cooking burgers or anything at the time. I ended up being the master chef when I was 4th year in, but when I started, I was really bad. And so I'm always cleaning tables. It's the worst job. You're taking out the trash. But it's where I belong. And Jeff would just come up and say, "Hey, Jim, be a leader out there." I go, "Dude, I'm cleaning tables." He goes, "Hey, even guys who clean tables can be leaders."
Yeah.
And so he had this positive outlook that no matter how small you or other people thought your job was, you could still lead from it. And it
Mhm.
reminds me of the story of some news agency doing an article at NASA. And they went and talked to the janitor and asked the janitor, "What do you do here at NASA?" And he's got his cleaning equipment in front of him and his mops and things like that. He goes, "What do we do here?" He goes, "I'm gonna send the first man to the moon."
Yeah.
And that's the attitude, I have always grasped on. "What are you doing here, McDonald's?" "I'm cleaning the table you're gonna eat your meal off of because it's gonna be super clean and germ free,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be healthier because of me."
Yeah.
Thing, all because of a good manager influence. In the
Yeah.
industry, I've had some fantastic managers, and one that stood out was Karen Diamond at, Ingersoll Milling Machine. We built aerospace, equipment, so the skin for the B-2 bomber or the F-18 or the F-35, the EFA fighter, all of these things are made on a composite machine that's about the size of the building you're in. It's a huge machine, and we built the CAD systems and things like that. We were building composite fiber equipment in an industry where metal ruled. So in the company, we were the Goonies. We were the laughing stock. They had nicknames for everybody in our small team, and we deserved the nicknames. There's no question about it. We had 2 PhD mathematicians, 2 physicists. I was one of the physicists, and a computer science guru. And we were building code to move 15 axes simultaneously, which you can't do mathematically. You can only move 5 at a time. So we have the look ahead logic, determine what you're doing, etc. And it was a very eclectic group of misfits that didn't fit in anywhere in the company. And she managed us all, and we did tremendous things, absolutely tremendous things. And I found that the way she managed is she knew more than everybody else, but she never assumed that she could teach us anything. We were really unteachable when you think about it. If you look at who we were. So she would know how to ask the right questions to guide us to what she was trying to teach us. I learned that her process for doing that was so much better than just sitting down and saying, "Hey, Jim, let me just show you how to do this."
Yeah.
And then she would share in the emotional frustration, the empathy that you were having. If you were having a problem with a protocol and it wasn't working, she would sit down and be frustrated with you and not trying to tell you how to do it. And I thought that was a really neat facet. So that same Goonies team that I was part of, we ended up because we were small, fast, and agile. We were given an opportunity to build the first ever Stewart platform milling machine, which it's called an octahedral hexapod. It's a mouthful. You can Google it. And it's a kind of a machine that's kind of like an upside down spider with 6 legs.
Right.
And it's impossible to move without some singularity issues and some issues. And we were solving the mathematics. And our team over the course of a year went from the laughing stock of the company to being the team that won Industry Week's magazine's product of the year for building the octahedral hexapod. And
Wow.
it was so massively impactful that our lab where we built the machine, and when I say a lab, it's not like a lab like in a conference room like I'm in. It's like a big, huge building where you've got a huge machine in it. Um, People would come to see demos of it. They want to see it work because it was just so crazy how it was. And we were kind of on the um, we've got to get control of this. We did from noon to 1 where people could come in and get demos and things
Ah,
because it just got to be crazy. Too many people were coming to get our work done, kind of a thing. So that's a boss who fosters that kind of innovation, not
yeah.
just in the products our mainstream making, but in a product that's never been made before. And the first one to come to industry with a functioning octahedral hexapod. So it was something that was just exciting because her leadership was of I guess you would call it servant leadership today
Yeah.
is probably the proper term, and it's just fantastic. We would do anything for her. It was just amazing.
But I think what's really interesting there is very few conversations you would have would draw a line between the management style of your manager in your high school job at McDonald's and in this very high profile, high intelligence workforce that you created, industry, winning award winning projects, and yet, when you pass the two things, like there's a sense of mission there. There's a sense of the leader being engaged and invested in you, the individual, but allowing you the autonomy to kind of have an impact, right? It's really interesting to me that there's a parallel between those two great bosses in those two very different environments.
And it's a great lesson to learn that no matter what industry you're in, what stature you're at, you can learn from anybody.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's take that thoughts, Jim. We're going to learn some lessons now, right? Because it's frankly, it's all been too positive, right? We've had too much success on your behalf, so we're going to move to section two, which we call first fails. We're not only here for the good stuff. We feel that we learn more from our mistakes, and actually, you've already alluded to this several times. But what's the first big mistake that comes to mind when you think about your career and maybe something you learned from it?
I'm gonna, okay. So this is where you get kind of, you have to be kind of right out there. All right. I've
Yeah.
made a lot of mistakes. I think you learn from mistakes. So I've learned a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, for
And
sure.
in the octahedral hexapod and the fiber placement and things like that, that was all great. Before that, I worked at Burroughs. I wrote operating systems. And I got out of college, have a degree in physics, math, computer science. I could go to the GM Tech Center and do research in physics, or I could go to California and build operating systems. I'm a young kid. I'm getting married. We moved to
What are you
California.
gonna
In the process of building um, mainframes and operating systems for mainframes, we got into a situation where the medium systems, Burroughs Medium Systems, it's now Unisys, by the way, they could not sell a single mainframe because they had no way to connect a terminal to the mainframe. The processor that the terminal's connected to and ran that terminal network went out of production in Pennsylvania, and it went completely dead, where we couldn't sell a single mainframe because we couldn't connect anything to it. And so I was put on a six-person crisis team to come up with a solution, and we did. It took 9 months. We had three people in Pennsylvania, three people in Pasadena, and we came up with a solution. We built it. I even I went into we had a theater where you had to defend your architecture, your programming design, and um, I did. I'm just a kid at this point, just out of college, and I'm defending, what it is. It's a year after I'd been there, and everybody in the room's kind of laughing at me, and um, I'm like, "We can do this. I know we can do this." And one guy just stood up in the theater and just basically said, "If you could do that, it's pure frickin' magic." So to this day, there is a module in the MCP. I was building MCP 9 and MCP 10. I think they're up to MCP 29 or something now. There's a module called Magic because I didn't know what to call it. So I built Magic. So we did solve the crisis. We solved the problem. And at that point, we were in Pasadena. Our family was in the Midwest. We decided, my wife and I, to move back to the Midwest. And that's when I went into aerospace. It's a
Mhm.
long way to getting to my biggest failure, but it's a big, big failure. So after we moved, Burroughs gave me the Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm 26 years old, and I get a Lifetime Achievement Award for what I had done, inventing a protocol. And it's like, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And yeah, there was some money that came with that. My wife took the money and she goes, I had to live with you during that time. I get the money. I'm going to go buy a washer and dryer.
Yeah, she earned it, yeah.
So that was great. The biggest mistake was my biggest lesson in life is my head got so big it couldn't get between the doorway.
Sure.
And I became an arrogant SOB would probably be the best way to put it. And it was difficult for those around me professionally because I'm too young to be getting an award like that. You should never do that. Kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
advice to people handing out lifetime achievement awards. Okay, you don't get them at 26. Come up with a different name for it.
yeah.
But I did have a manager and another good manager like Karen was. Frank Mabry was his name. And he put me on a PIP, performance improvement program. Right? I mean, when you think about a PIP, I didn't know at the time, it's a form of punishment
Yeah,
for, for all practical purposes. But he taught me communication skills. He taught me humility. He taught me all of these things. I took over a year to get through that PIP. But it wasn't a technological failure. I had plenty of those. I can come up with those like left and right. This is a
yeah,
devastatingly career embodied, uh, you know, failure that you're either going to jump off the bus and get
yeah,
out of the business, or you're going to realize somebody's investing their career into you. putting their career on the line for you. You've gotta work at it, and I did. And I mean, he put me in classes, interpersonal communications. I mean, he had a whole thing set up, and he totally invested in me. And since then, I've had opportunity to do that with others.
Yeah.
I had one person I had to put on a PIP out in Seattle. My manager that I reported to, the officer or the company I reported to, said, "You've got to fire this person." I said, "No, I'm not going to fire them. I'm going to put him on a PIP." And then when I put him on the PIP, I said, "Okay, so your mistake, and the reason you're on a PIP isn't because you're not knowledgeable. It's because you're not governing yourself and others working with you to govern. So we're going to put a governance process in place, code reviews, peer reviews, checkoffs that we're going to do. You're going to create all of this for the entire department, and then you're going to execute it by example because people learn by what you do, not what you say. And then you're going to come out of this PIP with a promotion. You'll move up one level."
Yeah.
And that motivated him to just, "Yeah, I'm totally serious about this." And I could not have done that if I had not been in his shoes. Where I'm sure Frank was told, "I know Jim's brain on a stick. He's gonna do great things for us, but nobody can work with him. Get rid of him."
Yeah.
I'm sure Frank said, "No, let me work with him." I'm pretty certain that must have happened.
Yeah, but I mean, the emotional intuition that's on display there, the emotional intelligence on all sides, right, is really impressive, I think, because I think a lot of people, hear performance improvement plan and they think, like your second time, when the boss was saying that to you, it's like, I'm getting fired here kind of thing. Um, but actually, for you to have the kind of the humility at that point to take the learnings and get better, it's allowed you to pay it forward, right? Which is really interesting, I think. I do think on a very tactical level, if you can performance improvement plan somebody with the promise of a promotion at the end, it shows that you're committed to that person, and does make it somewhat easier for them to commit to the project, to the program, without just hearing what we all hear when we're told we need to improve, which is "I am a failure" kind of a thing.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly. That's it exactly.
I mean, one of the other questions we like to ask, and you've answered it already actually, is thinking about the first times you've realized something you thought you knew may have been wrong. And maybe in your case, that speaks to the fact that technically, clearly, you won a lifetime achievement award when you were 26, which I agree is absurd, but it also speaks to the achievement, right? So maybe, you were in a position where there weren't many people around who could teach you technical things, but I guess you had to learn those kind of interpersonal skills, like to be
Right.
successful.
I find if there's a technical impedance mismatch, no matter how good the technology is, it won't land. So
Yeah.
I see two kinds of impedance and mismatches in my career. One is the tech is not yet mature. So let's
Mhm.
look at generative AI today. Okay. We had prompt engineers, and then we get into RAGs, retrieval augmented generation. Now we're into agents, agentic AI, and I've got MCP, model context protocols. All these things are building up. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if I started implementing generative AI in production, I might have, and I might have done this, gone too early, and the technology is not ready, and it just blows up in your face and it embarrasses you. And it's harder to recover from that blow up than if you didn't introduce it at all sometimes.
Yeah. No, 100%.
And that's one type of error that I seem to repeat making. You're supposed to not make mistakes over and over again, but it's so easy at times when the technology is new and exciting, right? The other one is the technology might be mature, but the human's not ready.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I call this I'm going to put a Ferrari in your garage. Okay. Well, here in the United States, Matt, we don't know how to drive clutches and stick shifts. Most of us don't, right? That's the only way my wife and I drive, but most don't. So if I put a Ferrari with a manual
Yeah.
transmission in your garage, it's going to be the worst car you've ever owned.
Yeah.
It doesn't move. It stalls all the time. It jerks. I can't drive it. It's the worst car. I'd rather get that automatic Kia instead of the
Well,
Ferrari with manual transmission. So
yeah.
it's an impedance mismatch of the user and the technology.
completely, because the Ferrari's got no trunk space as well, right? And if you need your golf game or whatever, it's not helping top.
Exactly.
I think where we are right now with AI specifically, it's very interesting from that perspective. I call it the Jurassic Park problem, which is just because we can do something, should we do it, right? And I think you see mature organizations currently who have kind of earmarked this year as the year when they want agentic to be like part of the business workflow, but the business workflow has to be in a sufficiently optimal state for it
Correct.
to have a positive impact. And so I think there's a really interesting conversation between business leadership and technology leadership about exactly what you're talking about, right? Are we better off having a Ferrari in the garage, or is it about running that Kia as efficiently as we possibly can at this point?
Correct. And
Interesting.
sometimes it's a growth thing. I've done things with teams. And again, I've had so many failures. I've learned the few things that work right, and I go and execute those with high confidence because I know how to screw it up really well. I'm really good at that. So
Yeah.
if you take a look at a lot of things, sometimes you get into a technology. I'll use our generative AI as an example. I like introducing people to RAGs because you can build them without code and you can do it in a manner that they get immediate gratification from it. But a RAG is not a solution.
Mhm.
I've got Jim the Architect RAG. You can ask me any question. All the papers I've written, books, and everything is in there. You can ask me anything. Probably answers better than I do. But it's just a part of a learning process. It's not the destination. And
Yeah.
then you get into the agentic and things you were talking about. You get into serious solutions. Well, you can get into those after you build the non-serious solution as part of the learning process. But if I jump into the more complex agentic AI, using AutoGen, I'm probably going to not do well at it because I didn't take the time to learn what it is I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you need little projects to get you to where you've learned before you go into something that would end up in production eventually.
Yep. No, I think that's 100% true. This is fascinating, Jim. But I want to lighten the mood, and we're going to move on from failures now, because what we really want to do is get to know you a little bit beyond your professional veneer. So we're going to move on to our section, which we call Quick Fire Firsts, where we find out about the real person using our patented. This is very much a project that's learning rather than ready to execute code, but we call it our random question generator. So please, Jim, could you pick a number between 1 and 13?
Let's go with 12.
Go with 12. What was the first concert you remember going to? First gig?
First concert,
Yeah.
that would be Beach Boys at the Monroe County Fair.
Come on. What an answer that is.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
The
very
first
cool. What
mosh pit was Dream Theater.
That's incredible. And what are your memories of that gig?
Well, the first one, it was my first live concert, and my first memory would be it sounds close to the recordings, but it's quite different, but it's a
Yeah.
lot more exciting,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Wow. I can't believe we managed to get that particular answer. Go on, then let's do one more, and see if we can live up to the quality of that answer. One more number between 1 and 13, please, Jim.
Number 8.
Number 8 is the first thing you would buy if you won the lottery.
First thing I would buy if I won the lottery. That's a that's a
Yeah,
tough one
it
because
gets
I
harder.
wouldn't buy anything.
Yeah.
I wouldn't buy anything. Um, I live in this comfort zone of, um, I guess what I've got is enough, and any more I just wanna give away kind of a thing. I'm not Bill Gates, I'm not that kind of a, "I got money to throw away," kind of a thing. But from a lottery perspective, at the stage that I'm at right now, obviously, it would be one of those things where, um, I would wanna just get rid of it probably, just donate it
Mhm.
somewhere. One of the
Yeah.
things, though, we have a joke in my family, my wife and I, and everybody knows this. Um, what do you need in life. And I keep telling people I need a Lotus in my garage, a Lotus sports car in my garage. And so a couple of years ago, my wife for my birthday got me a Matchbox Lotus.
There you
She
go.
put it in the garage by itself, and she gave me a card and said, your birthday present's waiting for you in the garage." My Lotus. And I opened the door, empty, and this tiny little Matchbox car on the ground. Okay, I cherish that Matchbox car more than I would cherish a real Lotus because of the joking relationship my wife and I have, kind of
Yeah.
a thing. So if I were to win the lottery, I would probably, I know it sounds altruistic, just give it away. I wouldn't want to become the person I would become if I started spending it, quite frankly.
No, no, completely. It's funny. I mean, I think you know, you did recognize the privilege in saying that when you said it, and it's funny as you know, beyond a certain time of life, like it almost feels undignified to want the thing, right? And there's nothing I want in life. I would pay off my mortgage. That might be the difference here, right? But I don't do the lottery. That's never going to happen. But I would
Are you
definitely.
kidding me? I'm going to stick it to the bank when I die.
Also a good way of thinking about things. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, wonderful, Jim. We're hitting on every question here. So we're going to move on to the final section, first and final thoughts. And I'm actually really interested to ask you this question. What would be the first piece of advice you would give to somebody starting out today?
And we've touched on this. I have a little drawing thing I do where I have a star, a dollar sign, and a toilet, and I draw a person, and I say, where are you going to put your aim?
Mhm.
If you put your aim for the money, or you're going to put the aim for perfection or attainment of something. And Newton's law holds. What happens is whatever you aim for, you're going to land one step lower. So if I aim for money, I'm going to end up in the toilet. I may have more money than anybody else, but I won't feel confident or I won't feel content, I should say, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If I have like a perfection that I'm pursuing, I want to build the best generative AI program. I want to build the best neural network. I want to build a vector database that nobody's seen before. I want to write MCP 56. I don't know, whatever it is that you're after. You will never attain that. You'll get close as a true north, but you'll seem to somehow have just enough money
Yeah.
to continue pursuing that pursuit. And I think that's kind of the advice I give people is focus on the star. What is your star? And focus on your star. And don't
Yeah.
worry about the money or the fame or anything. When the university calls you and says you're nominated for the year, you should be thinking about, great, I'm
Yeah.
trying to fix this bastard star that I'm trying to attain.
The work is the thing. There's
They-
it
it's just
Lewis's
like a,
first.
yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
in Lewis's first book, Liar's Poker, there's this brilliant story about he's working as a trader. He's had a year in London working as a trader, and he's earned enough to buy a house in central London. But he's annoyed because the guy next to him earned more, and he calls his boss to complain about it. And his boss says, "Quit today," because if what you're motivated by is like earning money, and you're not happy with what you've just got, you're never going to be happy. You're just going to be working for a better class of feeling poor, and
Right,
that's staying
exactly.
in my mind forever, right? It's like to your point, if the work is the thing and you follow the goal and the dream, like the other things will follow. But to your point, you'll care less about them anyway when they happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, but I do want to ask you about that. I want to ask you about the work itself. So when everything's said and done, like what's the masterpiece? What's the first thing you would want to tell people about that you've achieved? And maybe we've already touched on it, right? But like, what is the kind of career masterpiece that you've built that Jim Wilt would want people to know about you? First of all,
So in line with hopefully everything we've discussed so far, I'll give you a non-standard answer on that. We've talked about octahedral hexapods and lifetime achievement awards, blah blah blah. My next masterpiece is the masterpiece. Whatever I'm working on now or next,
Mhm.
that's going to be the coolest thing I've ever done, hands down. So I'm working on for the third largest retailer in the world. I built and architected a pilot using generative AI insights platform. Okay, when that comes to fruition, once it's a year into it now, well, that'll be the coolest thing I've ever done. Or it could be the thing I'm working on that's going to follow that. That could be the coolest thing I'm ever going to do. So I like that movie. Is it, what is it? Not Rat Race, Mad Mad World. It's the race across the country,
Mhm.
and it's in the '60s or '70s movie. It's an old movie, and they hire an Italian race car driver to come in, and he gets into the Ferrari, and he takes the rearview mirror and just rips it off and throws it out. And he goes, "We don't need that for this race."
There you
He's
go.
always looking forward. For
Yeah,
me, my masterpiece is yet to be achieved. I'm working
amazing.
on it. It's the next thing I'm working on, or the thing after that will be my masterpiece. And in the process, you've got this trail of awards and things that you get. I never look back at that. That rearview mirror is gone. I don't look back on my laurels. There are problems that are unsolved right now, and the industry's never been more exciting than it is right now. And I've said these words when PCs came into the world,
Yeah.
when the local area network came into the world, when the internet came into the world, when the cloud came into the world, and now it's AI and agentic AI and all of these things. I built my
Whatever.
first neural network in the late '80s when I was in aerospace. Who would have thought it would be on my phone
Yeah,
answering questions today? It's so
yeah,
exciting. And
yeah,
being part of that movement, it doesn't get any better. So
yeah.
our industry is so wonderful because it never settles. It just keeps evolving and changing year after year after year. But every 5 to 15 years, there's a huge jump. And we are in the middle of a huge jump right now.
We certainly
Holy
are.
smokes. People should just be jumping on their toes. It's a great time to be in this industry.
No, I quite agree. And actually, Pat McGowan, who was the founder of IDG, who published our publications for the first 60 years of their existence, always he had lots of phrases, but the one he would always come back to is the best is yet to come. And if you're in this
Yes.
industry, that's the way you have to think about things. The best is yet to come. We are living through an industrial revolution. Frankly, if you're in technology and media as we are, it's been non-stop industrial revolution for the past 25 years that I've been in this industry. And you have to have the mindset you've just articulated is that, you learn. We've talked a lot today about learning from your mistakes, learning your lessons, but you're taking them towards the next thing, which is amazing. Jim, this has been such an incredible conversation. Before we close off, I just wonder if you had any, not first, but final thoughts.
Yeah, I would say life's just too short to comply with everything. If you're not a risk taker, take some small risks and build up that muscle. And
Mhm.
don't be afraid to fail. When you fail, you learn, and then you can approach something with higher confidence because you know how to totally screw it up. So you won't that way. At least you might learn another way to screw it up, and I do that all the time. But I think from an advice perspective, I would offer people that the only thing I would say is don't waste your time being safe. Take a few risks, learn. If you fail, embrace the failure. And sometimes failures hurt. I mean, I run marathons. I've fallen down while running. I get a little cocky when I run sometimes. These kids in the mountains when I used to live in Washington, you know, they passed me going down a hill, and I'm climbing up the mountainside hill. I pass all of them. I'm an old dude, man. I'm passing these high school kids, okay? And then there's another downhill, and I'm like, man, I just totally nail this kiss. Boom, I fall flat on my face. I slide on the gravel. I got it blood everywhere. And these kids come up to me, oh, guy, are you okay? We want to help you. Let me get these stones out of your leg.
Yeah,
Everything. And I go, like, I deserve that so much.
yeah, yeah. But it's
But
such.
be willing to fall. It hurts
Yeah.
and get up again.
It definitely hurts when the younger people look at you in that way, right? You're the old guy who's fallen over.
I
That's a
just
sad
passed
one.
them and I just said, good job, guys. You're doing good. You'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's a sad moment. Well, Jim, Thank you so much. It's been an incredible conversation. My thanks to Jim Wilt, and thanks for watching and listening to this episode of First Person, the show where we meet the most interesting people in IT, and Jim certainly is that. And we learn from them what makes them tick by focusing only on their firsts. I have been your host, Matt Egan, asking you to enjoy, like, and subscribe wherever you find us. And if you are an interesting person in IT, please let us know. You might be the next first person. Thank you so much, and goodbye.